Medical tourism. Have you heard that term? Well, it's a thing, and it's raking in tons of money, garnering rave reviews from many Americans leaving the continental US for offshore medical treatments not yet approved here by the FDA. Now, you may have heard of these horror stories of people who got botched plastic surgery or something like that abroad, but that's not what I'm talking about here. To be honest, there are lots of botched plastic surgeries that happen stateside too. So, what I'm talking about are things like cancer treatment, pain treatment, autoimmune treatments, all areas the US is lagging behind. For example, Cuba has a certain type of lung cancer treatment in the form of a shot. Now, it's not a panacea of cancer treatments, but this vaccine has several tremendous results over a decade in that island nation that has really been stifled by US sanctions. They're still doing great stuff there. And then there are pancreatic cancer treatments permitted in France that aren't FDA approved here. And then there's stem cell treatments for a variety of issues that are being done all over Europe and in Latin America. Today, I'll be talking with the founder and CEO of BioXcellerator, a stem cell treatment facility in Medellin, Colombia. And no, this is not a paid video. I'm talking with him because Eric Stoffers, or Stoffers rather, is not camera shy. He's American, and because his business is booming in Colombia with a wait list spanning months for treatment. So I wanted to know what the buzz was all about. So here's my interview with Eric Stoffers, founder of BioXcellerator in Colombia. So Eric, tell us a little bit about BioXcellerator. What do you do there? Why do you do it?
BioXcellerator is a US based stem cell company. The only problem with that is that in the US, you can really only administer the lowest level stem cell available. And so we really focus on treating rare disease and getting people out of chronic pain, which means we have to use the highest level of technology in stem cell right now. And that has to be performed offshore. So our treatment facility is in Medellin, Colombia. But our goal as a company is to alleviate suffering. And there's many, many, many people in this world suffering.
And that was going to be the next thing I was going to ask you was about location. I mean, I've looked at your website, I've looked at the videos. If I didn't know any better, I wouldn't know. I'm from Los Angeles. I wouldn't have known that I wasn't looking at a place in the middle of Beverly Hills. So the question then is, why particularly set up shop in Colombia? Because I think many people in the US might be, dissuaded perhaps about seeking medical treatment in Medellin. What do you say to those folks?
Well, I would say that they're wrong, but it's not because their opinion is wrong. That's the vast majority of us. And I'm an American guy. And before I really started looking at some of the best healthcare systems in the world, which, by the way, isn't really the US at this point for many reasons.
Yeah.
But our perception is wrong. There's a lot of these countries around the world, like Colombia, and there's some others in Asia actually that are very progressive. I put Japan at the top of the list for progressive medicine. But there are other countries around the world that have fantastic doctors. They have a different style of care that is more familial. And the best part is they are not dictated to practice medicine with their patient by the pharmaceutical and insurance companies. They are a doctor-patient relationship, and that's how they practice medicine. And that's a key to our success.
That is a good point. The US is not necessarily the world leader anymore in especially when it comes to biotech, I would say. But why is the US lagging behind so many other countries? I guess in the way in this instance for allowing for stem cell treatment. I mean, is it a for us here in the US, is it a question of ethics or moral religious values maybe as to, perhaps how stem cells are acquired or something like that?
Yeah, if we're talking about stem cells specifically, I would say that your assessment is correct that the US is lagging pretty far behind. But there's other technologies and other research that the US is still the best in the world at producing and innovating. But when it comes to stem cell therapy, again, I do believe that we're a little bit far behind. And that's just because the technology has advanced so rapidly that the way that we go through an FDA clinical trial process, which, by the way, the FDA is a fantastic organization. They're here to protect the American people. They've done a fantastic job over the years. There's a reason that they're there. But the slow bureaucratic way that they have to go through the process takes decades and
Yeah.
millions and millions and millions of dollars. And the technology is advancing so quickly that we've just advanced too fast for the regulation. But the problem with that is that there's a lot of people that are not being helped, and in some cases dying because they don't have legal access to this therapy. And that's a real shame. That's why I founded the company, to try to put a small dent in that population of people that were not having answers, and unfortunately either being in chronic pain or dying because of slow regulations.
Yeah, I actually read that Jack Nicklaus, obviously the legendary golfer, sought some sort of stem cell treatment at a different facility in Germany, and he was raving to the press about how much better he was feeling. But he did lament about having to travel overseas to try something like this. Um, do you guys only focus on like a healing type of therapy, or I mean, what sort of treatments do you offer at BioXcellerator, and what do they do in terms of helping someone heal, like Jack Nicklaus was talking about, or even for beauty or anti-aging?
Yeah, all of that. So there's a lot to unpack there. But first off, going back to a previous statement, one of the things that I like to point out at the beginning is that we are using some of the most advanced technology in stem cell, but it is the ethical technology and the ethical sourcing of the stem cells. Back in the early 2000s, there was this big hubbub and kind of shutdown on stem cell research
Mhm.
because there were a couple of bad companies and maybe bad physicians that were out there, sourcing unethically, maybe from Planned Parenthood or one of those unfortunate unethical sources. We have a healthy mom and a healthy baby that go home and live healthy lives together, and they donate their umbilical cord, their healthy, safe, umbilical cord, to great
Mhm.
scientific companies like ours, and we're able to help thousands of people because of it. So that to start is a component of what our science is, but it's exactly what you mentioned. It is a healing science. It is not like a pharmaceutical product where you have a shot and you block the pain temporarily, or you take one medication that has a counterindication that
Right.
you need another medication that you need 16 other medications for. This is getting to the systemic root cause of your potential problem, whether it's an orthopedic injury or an autoimmune disease or even a neurological condition. This is having your body, which is the miracle, accelerate its own abilities to heal itself. And of course, through scientific work, we have ways to exponentially accelerate that. But that's essentially what we do.
That's really nice to hear, that the way you acquire the stem cells are not, the stuff that you had mentioned, people taking it from aborted babies or something like that, because you hear about a lot of that stuff in the news. Like, for example, my son, when I had him, I did the whole umbilical cord, the
Uh-huh.
storage, because I've looked into that in the way of, God forbid he developed cancer or somewhere down the line, he has this miracle stem cell, which is the what do they call it? Don't they call it like the origin of like of the human cell is the stem cell?
Well, the stem cell is the only cell in your body that is able to replicate and indefinitely replicate over your lifetime. The problem with that is that as we all age, that replication goes from maybe a 24-hour period where they continue to replicate every 24 hours to slowing down to 48 hours and then 72 hours and then so on and so forth. And that might not sound like a lot, but if you take that 24-hour brand new fresh mesenchymal stem cell from the umbilical cord, which is the most potent and pure, that's replicating every 24 hours. As you get into your 30s and 40s, well, now it's dramatically slowed down, and that's why we're not able to heal or catch up with the disease and the environment that our bodies are going through every day.
Wow. Now, who are your clients? I mean, I'm not asking names, but is this something geared towards someone that's very well to do? Or I mean, I can't imagine treatments like this are very cheap. Could you give us like a ballpark range?
Yeah, sure. So as an entrepreneur, one of the things that was most attractive to getting into this sector was that I was going to be able to help people. And one of my goals was to get this really crazy high cost of stem cell. And this is back in 2015. And, we were seeing some clinics charge hundreds of thousands of dollars in some cases, and really
Wow.
get that down to a place that was more manageable. And then, of course, the ultimate goal would be able to have this provided by insurance providers,
Mm,
which in my opinion, is a no-brainer because it would actually lower their cost pretty dramatically. But I think that's a long ways away. But my point is that to answer your question also is that it is still not inexpensive. I wish it
right.
was, but it is not. It is a very expensive technology to produce and administer. And so, the ballpark range is around $20,000, and that is, unfortunately out of pocket. So most of our clients are fairly of high net worth. But we have a lot of people, like I mentioned, are they've been living in chronic pain for sometimes decades, and these might not be super high net worth people, maybe just middle class people. But when you look at the difference between maybe buying a new car or having an extra vacation this year with your family, which by the way I think you should do. I'm not talking you out of that, but if it's spending 20,000 on a vacation or a new car, or you could be out of chronic pain and have a better life
Yeah.
with your family, and not need that new car for a year or two, then we have people that pay that all day. But the other point I think you were maybe making, because you mentioned guys like Jack Nicklaus, we have a lot of A-list celebrities. We have a lot of professional athletes that come here. Basically anybody in a high impact sport like NFL or UFC, definitely baseball, any sport. Those are our guys, because they're chronically getting injured, and then also they have to have their bodies at peak performance, and they also have to recover as fast as possible to get back into their game. So those are our patients that we see on an everyday basis.
Is this sort of treatment also preventative at all, or is it just treatment?
For sure, it's preventative. That's the secret. So we have a lot of people that are into longevity, that really study up on health and alternative health. So it's not just the pharmaceutical and drugs, which by the way, those are miracles.
Yeah.
But you have to look at everything from nutrition to alternative therapies like cryotherapy and red light therapy and hyperbaric
Yeah.
chamber and stem cell. So those are also people that we see. We believe that it's a component to the fountain of youth, and the other part of that is it's also just a really good, let's call it a booster shot for lack of better terms. But the mesenchymal stem cell upregulates and downregulates your immune system, so it's a good booster shot just for general immunity and health.
Wow. I would never think that. It's just because we're having this conversation that I thought to ask. I mean, if people do this that aren't even hurting or aren't that old.
All the
Um,
time.
wow. Well, are Asians, I mean, as we know, Asians are a rapidly rising demographic here in the US. Asians as a group are the most college educated, have the most discretionary income, and are oftentimes very early adopters to tech and biotech, even. Are you seeing very many Asian clients? I mean, have Asian folks been very receptive to this new sort of medical treatment?
Absolutely. Yeah, I would agree with every one of your statements, and I know they're coming from a factual standpoint. But not having the facts in front of me, I know that Asians are typically early adopters, always highly educated. It seems like, and so we have a lot of doctors, Asian doctors, that have been early adopters to our clinic. They've
Wow.
brought not only referred a lot of patients to us, but they're patients themselves. And a lot of them are just, as you mentioned before, they're just looking for the regenerative process, the properties, not really a repair, meaning they're not hurt, they're not in chronic pain, but they know that this is a good thing for the health and longevity of themselves. So yes, I would say that we have a big subset of our patient group that are Asians, and it's for all those reasons that you just mentioned.
Wow. Well, what do you find is the biggest hesitation among people if, they were given the opportunity to try this sort of treatment?
Number one is that unfortunately they go to their doctors in the U.S., which by the way are some of the best doctors in the world, and we have U.S. doctors that are employed in our company. So, but a lot of doctors, especially the best doctors that are specialists that have been practicing and becoming even better specialists over the last 20, 30 years, did not have stem cell science in med school 30 years ago, right?
Right.
And so it's something that's progressed pretty rapidly. But those doctors, because they don't know much about it, will say one of a couple of things. It's usually, oh yeah, I've heard that about that or read something about that in a journal, and it's the future of medicine. But they assume that it's 10 years away from now or 20 years away from now. They don't know that it's happening right now. So that's problem number one. When our patients go to their doctor and ask about it, they think that it's a lot further away than it is. And number two, I would say, we have to be offshore. And so people's perception, especially when you talk about Medellin, Colombia, which, doesn't have the best reputation
Right.
from 30, 40 years ago, which by the way is an amazing medical system, beautiful city, super safe now. But that's obstacle number two. People have this perception of medical practice offshore, which
Mhm.
is not at all the case. We have incredible doctors, top-notch technology, highly trained and educated. So that's the other obstacle that we have to overcome.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a lot of 20th century, American exceptionalism, thinking that our, medical way of doing things is the only way to do it. And we fail, I think, as a society to realize that the rest of the world has caught up to us, and it's the 21st century. Well, what about, is stem cell therapy or treatment, could it be an alternative to plastic surgery in some instances, maybe instead of a facelift, or what about even hair, men that go get hair plugs? If stem cells are, you know, something that can replicate any cell, would it work to replace plastic surgery?
So I don't know about replace, but certainly in some cases it would prolong or maybe alleviate for some people, depending on their goals. But so specifically about hair and face, those are two treatments that we do all the time, every day at the clinic. A lot of times it's that's not the first thing that patients are coming all the way to Columbia to do. Typically it's an orthopedic issue or maybe even a spouse of a professional athlete that's coming down to do the orthopedic treatment. They'll do the face and hair treatments all day, every day. Fantastic results. Stem cells do help regenerate the collagen in your skin. It helps with elasticity. It helps with a general youthful look. So we have a lot of anecdotal, pictures and testimonials. But with hair, wow, it's incredible. As long as you still have a hair follicle, if you're a bald guy where you're shiny bald, there's no more follicle. There's not much we can do. But if you're in the place where you're just starting to kind of lose hair, or even getting hair plugs, as you mentioned, we work with some specialists down here that combine stem cell and the hair plugs because it helps them with anti-rejection, and then it helps stimulate the follicles to grow more. So great results there. Yeah, there's a rejuvenation and anti-aging component of stem cell for sure.
How is this stuff done? Is it like just done in sort of like an outpatient type thing? Is it a surgery? Is it a shot?
I'm glad you asked. Yeah, good question. So in most cases, it is non-invasive, so it's a simple shot. That with the hair, the face, it would be a shot. Most of the times, we'll do a simple IV for a systemic treatment.
Wow.
But if we're talking about more orthopedic related injuries, then it gets a little bit more invasive. We'll do ultrasound guided injections, either intra-articular or intramuscular. And then we also specialize in something that really sets us apart from a lot of the other clinics out there, is that we do spine and disc treatments as well. So we have neurosurgeons that will actually take mesenchymal stem cells and inject into the disc and facets to help with major either
Yeah.
degenerative diseases or even worse, trauma.
Now, for the latter group, is that something you have to be put under to receive?
Only for the latter group, yeah. So typically with the intrathecal or the spinal injections, it's not always put all the way under, although in some cases we do, depending on how severe the patient is and how invasive we have to be. But it would either be a light sedation. It's not typically general
Like
anesthesia.
twilight?
Twilight, exactly. Yep, that's exactly right.
So can people go home the same day?
Always, they're always back in their hotel room with their spouses or significant others that day. But we do ask that they come to our clinic and be here. In most cases, a week. Usually, it's 3 to 5 days, and they are here for treatment on basically every day for a couple of hours. So we
Okay.
also take a more integrative approach. So it's not just the stem cell shot. We're also doing hyperbaric chamber, orthomolecular medication, red light therapy, cryotherapy. So we take an integrative approach. And so you'll be getting that administered throughout the week along with your stem cell therapy.
Wow. Yeah, the facilities look beautiful from what I saw on the website. Um, I want to go back to something you touched on a little earlier about stem cell treatment aiding in longevity, maybe better overall health. Do you know, at least from anecdotal evidence and the patients you've seen, the clients you've had, I'm sure the science is still out on that one, but why would stem cell therapy aid in longevity or aid in overall better health?
Yeah, you're right. The science is still out on that. There's definitely no way to prove that right now.
Right, not yet.
Not yet, not yet. There's a lot of great companies that are working on protocols, and I would put us in there with one of those companies. To really attack longevity and lifespan, and that goes along with many other modalities, as we keep mentioning. It's not just the stem cell. The goal and the thought process in the scientific community is that with some of these other alternative therapies, including stem cell, you'll be able to slow the lengthening of the telomere. And the telomere, once that's gone, that's essentially death, not just cell death, but the death of all of us. And so the goal is to slow the shortening of the telomeres, but that could happen from many different treatment modalities. And really, part of the goal for what we do as stem cells from a rejuvenation standpoint is anti-inflammatory markers. We really try to reduce inflammation throughout your body, whether that's systemic or in the gut or as a condition of a trauma or a neurological condition. So that's number one reason why I think that it will really aid in the bed in helping longevity. The other is what I mentioned earlier about the immune system.
Hmm.
The stem cells have the ability to, when they're introduced to your body, to upregulate or downregulate your immune system based on what you need as an individual. And that will help you with infections and fight disease and really longevity in the long run.
How far out are we here stateside from seeing companies like yours popping up all over the country or, made readily available at, say, a med spa?
Yeah, the good and the bad news is that the good news is that there are already clinics in the US that are administering stem cells. As I mentioned before, it's a very low level science. There's a lot of regulation within the FDA and the Health and Human Services Code that dictate that the highest level science cannot be administered yet in the United States. So you will see ads for stem cell in the US. Typically, that's probably more beneficial for lower level things like maybe aesthetic treatments, maybe very low level orthopedic issues with young people that have the ability to heal themselves. But once you get into more severe and chronic conditions, you certainly need to go offshore. To answer your question, I think unfortunately we're still probably the better part of a decade away from having this fully regulated. But I will say with confidence that I have seen a shift in the way that the regulators are talking about stem cell therapy. Whereas before COVID, we'd be at conferences with people in the FDA talking
Yeah.
about stem cell, and it seemed like an impossible task and maybe a 20-year project. Now, since COVID, they're really talking a little bit more favorably about getting this in the hands of at least people that have no other options, people that are going to, for lack of better terms, are going to perish anyways. So why not let them try this alternative? Why let them die without at least giving them a shot at life? And some of them we will extend their lives or maybe alleviate their condition. So I think we're closer than we used to be, but I still think we're the better part of a decade away.
Oh boy. Yeah, I'm very interested to see how the stem cell industry, I don't know if it's fair for me to call it industry, but I'm very curious to see how this grows, how it expands, because I think if there were ways for companies to acquire stem cells the way your company does, at a broader scale, I imagine there'd be so much more demand because, like you said, I think the more kind of shady companies in the 10, 15 years ago that were originally working on stem cells acquired them in such a manner that really put the American population, and let's face it, America is still very deeply Christian. It
Yeah.
it really put off Americans to looking at stem cells as, a means of any treatment because of the way they assume it's acquired. So, I thought it was really fascinating for us to have this conversation, knowing that you guys acquired the stem cells in an ethical manner. I think that alleviates a lot of people's concerns. And I'm very curious. I hope someday I get to go out there and check out Medellin, see your facilities in person, see how it's done. Very cool stuff. And I hope people will at least go learn about what this kind of technology is, because, like you said, technology is taking leaps and bounds, and people are living longer than ever and can feel better than ever thanks to medical science like this and people starting companies like yours. So, Eric Stoffers of BioXcellerator in Medellin, Colombia, thank you so much. If anything changes, new technology, let me know. Want to get the viewers involved so they stay abreast to all the ways that they can, better their lives, better their health, and the Asian community is always at the forefront of that. Let's face it, we like
I,
we like knowing that stuff.
Well, thank you for having me on, but I think you're exactly right. The Asian community and, specifically American Asians
Mhm.
are always more progressive, as we talked about before, more educated, but certainly more progressive. And, we've seen the Asian Americans change the culture in America also for health. We don't
Yep.
always just have Western medicine anymore. And so we need that help in the stem cell industry as well. So thank you for allowing me the opportunity to talk about it.
Yeah, thank you. You're right. You're right. We brought in, the whole yoga pandemic. It's an epidemic of yoga everywhere. The green juices, the holistic health, this alternative Eastern medicine. It used to be, witch doctor stuff even 20 years ago. But suddenly it's very widely accepted. And I hope to see bioaccelerator and stem cell technology be as accepted as Eastern medicine is already. So we will stay in touch. Eric
Thank
Stoffers,
you.
thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks.